so much for joining us today. We are committed to supporting educators during this time to be aware of what's available for their own mental health and that of their staff and the folks that they work with, as well as just take a moment to breathe and remember that we have to take care of ourselves in order to do these incredibly difficult jobs that all of us are doing. So we appreciate you all so much for being here, for choosing to take that time to support yourself and also to support those that you work with. And I'm pleased to be able to turn this over to both Patrick and, oh, where did she go? Where's our keynote here? Sharon, your box moved on me.
Don't you hate it when that happens? I hate it when that happens. Where'd they go?
Great. Thanks for being here. We'll turn it over to both of you. And I believe you can share.
Yep.
Let us know if you can. Thanks again. Enjoy, everyone.
Good. I was going to say good morning. Can you tell how the day has flown for me and probably for all of you also? We're really happy to be with you today. I'm Sharon Fishel. I'm the school counseling and mental health specialist at the Department of Education, and I serve on the school health and safety team. And if you're wondering why I'm kind of looking to the side, is I've just put all of your pictures right over here on my big screen so I can see you. I have with me today a new DEED employee who's going to be presenting with us also, and that's Vanessa Shannon. And so I'll let her introduce herself in a minute along with Pat. But today we're going to talk about, we kind of titled this Mental Health Supports for All, How to Get Past Languishing to Flourishing. And this is a new presentation for us. Know that if you like this presentation and you would like for somebody to do this with your staff, or you know, if you're a superintendent with all of your staff, if you're a principal with your school staff. I saw that Dina was on here, and I know last year Pat and I did a presentation that was similar but not the same as this to all of her staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa to introduce herself next. Or no, let's go with Pat because Vanessa's got the slide after that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pat Sidmore, and I am the Healthy Schools Specialist at Public Health, which means that I focus on all things school health related and am the liaison with Sharon and Vanessa and the team at DEED. And my background is in clinical social work, and I've worked most recently for the School Board Association and for almost a decade with the Alaska Mental Health Board. Vanessa, I'll turn it to you.
And I'm Vanessa Shannon. I'm from Fairbanks. I'm the mental health education specialist with the Department of Education, Early Development. And my background also is clinical social work and certified school social worker. Next slide, please. All right. So we are just going to go ahead. I want to acknowledge that all of us today are on Indigenous lands. And for me, I'm here in Fairbanks. I just want to gratefully acknowledge that this event is taking place in the territory of the traditional and original inhabitants of this land, the Tanana. And we say their name in this meeting to remind us of their culture and way of life, their special relationship to the land. And I just encourage you to think about the people whose land you are on. Social emotional learning is not a new concept or skill set, just a new educational or research name for skills that have been taught for thousands of years. So go ahead, take the opportunity in our time together today to consider the cultural or community values and strengths where you live, and think about how you will build on these in your SEL practice today. So let's go ahead, and we are gathered here virtually today. Please put in the chat box what your name is, what your role, and what district you serve. Let's see who's in the room, and then we go ahead and write something that you've learned about yourself or others from the pandemic. Welcome, Lori. So we have North Slope Borough Principal, welcome Sherry, George, Lower Kuskokwim, Rosalie from Cake, welcome. I know Sheena from Fairbanks. Welcome Dan. From
Nice to see you on this call.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Next slide, please. All right. So for today's objectives, we are just going to go ahead and get on the same page for understanding the current mental health landscape here in Alaska. Participants today will understand and recognize how the pandemic is affecting everyone. And then participants today will reflect on what resources they need and learn about resources that are available to them. So welcome everybody. Thanks for being here.
So you're going to know by the end of this hour that this is a collaborative conversation and we're all active participants. How many of you have been around long enough to remember when the Alaska Education Challenge started? Anybody? Dan? Yep. Sheena probably remembers. Lisa remembers. Several years ago, under the Governor Walker's administration, the Alaska Education Challenge, and they had three main areas that they targeted. It was increasing student achievement, encouraging responsible learning, and cultivating safety and well-being. So, you know, being on the school health and safety team, where my focus has been is safety and well-being of students. And the recommendations that came out of that was creating positive school climate, building trauma-engaged schools, which we're going to talk about a lot of resources that have been developed since all of this started, and then increase access to school counseling, social work, and nursing. That's where Vanessa's position comes in, and she's going to explain what exactly her position is toward the end of our presentation today. Alaska's Education Challenge challenged thousands of Alaska stakeholders and involved them. And the commissioner, as the commissioner says, an excellent education for every student every day. To do that, we need to be meeting the mental health needs of our students, as well as our staff, as well as ourselves. So that's really the aim that we're going to be having moving forward with this presentation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Pat to talk about the mental health in Alaska schools landscape.
Yeah, just before we really jump into some resources and some ideas, we wanted to let you know that this is going on. Some of you may have participated in this, but the Alaska Mental Health Trust and some partners here at Health and Social Services and at DEED put together this landscape report about what's happening in terms of mental health in schools. There's a link here. Hopefully you'll get those links later. It's at the Mental Health Trust site. And I think that we know that a lot of you are doing some amazing mental health services and social emotional learning in schools, but we really didn't have a sense, and we know it's so much driven by what resources are available in your community. So we really wanted to get that landscape assessment. And so what we did was we tried to interview all the districts. We got to 31 of them, our Stellar group did. They really kind of focused this area or the questions around mental health concerns, foundational elements, mental health supports, impact and barriers, and the ideal systems. And we looked at this through the multi-tiered system of support. So there's a summary report for the statewide results, and then there's also a summary report for each of the 31 districts that completed it. That's really kind of interesting to look at your own district or even to look at others to see what they're doing. There's another wave that's coming, and it's going to really focus on behavioral health agencies and what they're doing so that we can figure out some ways that school districts can tap into some successes around the state in their own communities and build out these supports, not only for the students, but for the adults too.
And Pat, what I just heard yesterday afternoon is we're now up to 32. So if your district was one of them that just could not fit this on your plate last spring, there is an opportunity for you still to participate in this and get your information all compiled together for you.
I think Vanessa's going to talk about just some highlights of the findings.
Yeah. So the impacts obviously from COVID-19 in schools were really pervasive for individuals, districts, and communities, and they were probably discussed the most in all areas of the interview. For individuals, pandemic impacts manifested in the forms of issues such as stress, anxiety, burnout for staff, and observations of increased needs, obviously among students that some predicted can continue into this school year. Isolation, trauma, depression, and anxiety were all anecdotal examples of pandemic-related impacts among students. The increase in need to put pressure on all tiers of supports and services, from delivery of universally offered Tier 1 supports to identification of Tier 3 intensive services. Delivery of district social emotional learning programs and mental health services were disrupted to varying degrees, with some programs pausing completely because of COVID and then others just having to adapt to make it work virtually. Identification of student need was really challenging in virtual interactions. Virtual environments also made it difficult to contact students and deliver students to some students, with some losing all contact with the district, unfortunately. Next slide, please. Another key finding that was there was great variability between districts. Districts were using a range of approaches, including internal and external resources to address student mental health. These combinations generally allow districts to provide some level of social emotional learning and mental health supports and services. However, the level of services and supports obviously varied significantly between districts with resources and needs. Districts were asked to really outline what mental health services were provided and supports in that context of multi-tiered system of support. And most districts have some form of services and supports at all three levels of that framework, with some exceptions. So some of the barriers, we know districts of all sizes really faced barriers to implementing or delivering mental health supports and services. And some of these barriers include alignment, availability, access, and resources, and external influences. But many districts share that really community partnerships are often valuable in overcoming some of these challenges. So partnerships are really important. Districts often use in-service and professional development opportunities to provide staff training for school climate and mental health priorities. Training topics have included trauma-engaged principles, culturally relevant approaches, and social emotional learning, among many others. Trained school staff and community partners are critical to providing mental health supports and services. Many districts include their staff and community partners as a strength for this work. And that relationship between building with families and community partners that comes from these efforts is also a really great strength of districts. Also, state, regional, and local community partners play an integral role in supplementing services outside the district scope, such as those Tier 3, more intensive therapeutic interventions. And then other partners too are really stepping in to collaborate with districts and share their expertise with students and staff through presentations and other Tier 1 universal or targeted Tier 2 support services.
So we promised you to some support for you. And so we want to start a little bit to get into that right now. And I'm not going to show this video, but how many people are familiar with the hand model of the brain to understand how stress works? Has anybody seen this before? So I had one of those rare things a few years ago, actually in Governor Walker's administration, where I'm sitting in the governor's office and they say, Pat, what's one thing about stress and trauma you'd like every Alaskan to know? And I said, you're going to think I'm crazy. But this is what I wanted. And I got a little prompting down there. Hand model of the brain real quick. I'll do it and steal Dan Siegel's thunder, who invented it. Hand model of the brain, frontal lobe, inside limbic system, brain stem. When we get stressed, our limbic system causes us to flip our lid, right? So we get out of our frontal lobe where we think and reason, and because we need to react. It's a really great adaptive thing, but it causes problems when we flip our lid, especially in school. And anyway, it's a great way to talk about it. I urge you to either Google that, hand model of the brain. There's a number of people who do some great videos, or look at Dan Siegel's. I think it's just, whether you use this or something else, I think it's really important in schools that there's common language about how to talk about our stress response in our bodies. Really works well with kids. I've used this with 5-year-olds, and they understand it. And they often take it home and teach their parents, which is also a great thing as well. So anyway, just a tool that you can use. I know Sharon and I have laughed that sometimes at the Department of Ed, at least when they were in person, her team would check in with each other. It's a great way non-verbally to check in to see how you're doing. Are you a little shaky? So anyway, it's good stuff. And then I want to talk about some data. This is from last year's School Climate and Connectedness Survey. It's not a representative sample, but it's about 20% of the school staff around the state that take this from AASB. You can see the breakdown by who took it. And I'm going to show you some results from some questions in the category of trauma-engaged schools. And it's broken out, they've broken it out by teachers, administrators, other certified staff, classified staff, and other staff across the top. And that first one, you can see really solid answers. I understand how the experience of trauma can affect a person's coping skills. Almost everybody says that they can do that. The next one down, at my school, I feel supported to respond to trauma experienced by students. Really pretty good numbers there as well. 2/3 at the lowest, up to almost 9 out of 10 for administrators. But here's the one that this is what leads us to talk about taking care of ourselves and yourselves and your staff. This one at the bottom. So this was last spring. I don't feel worn out. This is kind of a funky question. It's reversed, right? What we want are big numbers on this. And it says, I don't feel worn out by my work in ways that interfere with other parts of my life. So what that means is 23% of teachers say, yep, I'm good. But the other, 77 are a little either kind of neutralish or not doing well in terms of being overwhelmed. And so you can see how that breaks out for administrators. Not even half are in that category where we want. So we know that school is about, hair on fire, right? It's busy. It's in the best of times, it's a lot of activity and a lot of needs being met. And so we would love to, over time, see those numbers on that bottom measure go up and up as we figure out systems not only to support principals and superintendents, but teachers and other staff in the schools. So that's where we're starting. Sure.
So I was really happy to learn that your association was having a speaker series on We Care because over the last 18 months, life has been really hard and sometimes impossible. So today we're going to talk a little bit about where we are at. So on a scale of 1 to 10 today, put in the chat box where you're at, 10 being good, 1 being not so good. Where are you at today? Got a 4, an 8, another 8, 6. More 6s, some 9s. So the next part of our conversation is going to be about, there's a name for that blah that we're all feeling right now, and it's called languishing. Friends mention, how many of you have had friends mention that they were having trouble concentrating, or you yourself have been having trouble concentrating? Lots of times colleagues have reported with vaccines on the horizon, they weren't excited about 2021 or for the FY22 school year. You know, when this started in March of 2020, we all thought this was going to be over and done with by the time school started last fall. And it wasn't, right? And we're still there. Fortunately, most of us are back in-person learning, but not all of us. And how many of you have caught yourself staying up late, watching a movie you've seen 100 times, or instead of bouncing out of your bed in the morning, you're just, and when your alarm goes off, you're just flipping through your phone or playing a game on your phone? In the chat box, or we're a small group, you can unmute yourself. What are some other things that you've noticed about yourself or others that kind of some types of symptoms that we don't realize we all are having those in common? What are some other ones? Apathy, depression, anxiety, absolutely. Fatigue, that's a big one. Disengagement. Staff starting to drag, no motivation, no resilience. Food, I know, food. What would we have done without food the last 22 months? And we're all kind of tired. So is it burnout or is it depression? It isn't burnout. We still have some energy, right? It's not depression because we don't feel hopeless. We just felt somewhat joyless and aimless. And that's another word for that is languishing. Languishing is a sense of stagnation and emptiness. How many of you feel like you're muddling through the days, looking at your life through a foggy windshield? Here in Juneau, it's just natural because it's raining all the time. But many people are struggling with the emotional long haul of the pandemic. And with that are suffering with the chronic condition of languishing. I see lots of really good responses in the chat box. Vanessa, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So in psychology, we think about mental health on a spectrum from depression to flourishing. Flourishing is usually like we're at the peak of our well-being. We have a strong sense of purpose or meaning, mastery, and mattering to other people. And depression is the valley of ill-being. Usually you feel despondent, you feel really drained and worthless. So the void between depression and flourishing is the absence of really well-being. And you don't have to have symptoms of mental illness, but you're not exactly the picture of good mental health either. So you're not functioning at full capacity. Languishing really can dull your motivation. It really disrupts your ability to focus. Heard a lot of foggy or lack of energy or tiredness. Triples the odds that you'll cut back on work. So it appears to be more common actually than major depression. And in some ways it may be a bigger risk factor for mental illness. So the term languishing was coined by a sociologist named Corey Keyes, who was struck that many people who weren't depressed also weren't thriving. So his research suggests that people most likely to experience major depression and anxiety disorders in the next decade aren't the ones with those symptoms today. They're the people who are languishing right now.
So you don't necessarily catch yourself slipping slowly into solitude. You're indifferent to your indifference. When you can't see your own suffering, you don't seek help for yourself, or even do much to help yourself. Even though you're not languishing, you probably know people who, if you're not languishing, you probably know people who are. Understanding it can better help you help them. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I asked where you were at. Where do you think your staff is at? Where is the staff? I like the 6.5. That's great. I like to do 0.5s myself.
I think people are being real honest. I appreciate it.
Yes, yeah. And then think about, because, something that I kept stressing through this whole pandemic is that, eventually the pandemic, COVID's going to go away eventually. We hoped it would be sooner than now, but eventually it is. But the mental health effects from COVID is going to be with us for a while. And for some people for the rest of their lives. So let's think about your students next. Where are your students at? And I'm sure that varies from student to student, but on the average, where are they at? They're about where your staff is at, aren't they? And so for some of you, where you're at. And Dan, your students are doing them better than the rest of you, right? Yeah. They, sometimes kids are just more adaptable than we are as adults. And yeah, I think so, Tammy. I think it does vary from younger students to older students. Especially those kids that started kindergarten last year. They were virtual most of the year, and they don't know what a normal school day looks like. So for them, this is just normal. This is what we do. I have a lot of great nieces and nephews that wearing a mask is just what they do. Yes, younger ones are doing better than the older ones. Pat, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yeah, so Sharon and I and Deanna, a few of these slides may look familiar. Last year we did a series for about 40 different faculties, and I think thinking about what's going on through the lens of grief is really sort of a helpful way, not only to give ourselves some compassion, but also those around us. And so when we think of the model of grief that came out, gosh, in the 60s, it was a circle, or it was linear at first, and so the thinking at that time was that after loss, that we were in denial, and then anger and bargaining and sadness and depression, and then finally acceptance, right? And so denial in terms of this is, the virus is, going to be short-lived, and, we had hoped for all that, and it's not going to impact us, and it has, and people have done that, and there are parts of what we're experiencing that people are in denial about. And then anger, you're making me stay home, or we're certainly seeing this, frustration around mask use or not mask use. I mean, there can be a lot of anger around this. And then bargaining, well, if we just, I used to laugh in graduate school. I used to say, well, if I can just get to Tuesday. And then of course Tuesday came, and it was, if I can just get to Friday. I mean, there's a lot of bargaining that goes on as we approach all the loss of agency during this time. And of course, what you all were just putting in, that sometimes we slip into hopelessness, and I think that can certainly play out in ways that we're seeing with all of our staff and ourselves and our families and everyone. And then ultimately we hope to get some acceptance, right, where we can live with this, and we've moved on. And this was this great model that we had, and in reality, this model isn't really quite accurate, right? It really looks more like this. Whoops. It's a mess, right? We go here and we go there, and you know, we get even to a little acceptance, and then something pops up, and all of a sudden we're somewhere else on the grief cycle. And so this is really just a normal thing. And I'm seeing things in the chat. I'm a little slow on the uptake here, but yeah, those behaviors are about communicating these feelings, right? And I think this framework can, again, not only help us understand what our students are feeling, but what we're feeling as well. So I just think it's a healthy and a helpful model to think about what's going on. People have lost regulation skills. Yeah, I mean, we do see that. Thanks, Sharon. So is all this bouncing around, like in that last slide, is this part of what languishing is, right? Where we're kind of just moving back and forth, and we think we're somewhere, and then all of a sudden we're somewhere else. That's probably what's happening for a lot of us, and being able to talk about that and understand it and share it with others can really be a powerful way to cope and build some resilience, along with some other things that we've got coming up.
And being able to name it. That's an important skill, is being able to name what your feeling is and where you're at. And so I want you to take a look at all of our pictures we have on this slide. And instead of saying great or fine, imagine if we answered honestly, I'm languishing. Which slide speaks to you that's on this screen right now? The lady eating her computer. You know, Pat and I were talking about this. We were both ready to throw our computers out the window the other day. The little kid like this, right? How many of you felt like that at least once today? Like, oh, I can't do anymore. I can't take it anymore. This is just entirely too much. Bottom left, yep. Just kind of sitting there. Don't want to see anything. Don't want to do anything. I'm really surprised I haven't seen anybody yet, Pat, that put the one in the middle.
Dan did.
Dan,
He was honest.
I missed that one. It must have scrolled up. I'm fine. And you think about it, we don't want you to get to that one, the lane in the middle of the road saying, I'm fine, because if you're that, you are not fine. So I want you to do something for me now. All of you turn on your cameras just for a second. I'm gonna wait for y'all, put on your cameras. I want to see all your happy smiling faces. I see some familiar faces. I love it. I love it. All right, I'm gonna want you to put your finger to your head. And I want you to make a mental note. This mental note is, when you are that person in the middle of the road, who are you going to reach out to? Who are you going to text? Who are you going to call? Whose classroom are you going to show up to? Perfect, Sherilyn. Perfect. Make that mental note. Or if you can't think of anybody, just call me. I will be that person to talk you off that cliff. And I know there's some people on the screen that I'm looking at right now that I have talked off the cliff. So just give me a call. Conversations between us, and don't be the person in the middle of the road. I'm gonna be checking up on you, Dan, to make sure you're not still lay there in the middle of the road, okay? Because you know what, we did this for one faculty last year, Pat and I, and there was one of the teachers that said, yeah, I'm that lady in the middle of the road and there's a bus coming. And I know some of you are superintendents, you feel that bus coming a lot. So just make that mental note of who can you call and just talk it out, just get it out of your system, because that's important. You have to be able to let it go and get it out of your system.
Revenge of bedtime procrastination. Who is guilty of this one? You don't have to raise your hand, but I will. I have an 8-year-old, and that 8:30 to 10 o'clock time is so precious, but man, it's been going later and later and later. And it's really, we are staying up late to reclaim the freedom we've missed during the day. And is it a retaliation against a loss of control maybe during all this pandemic? This is the only thing we have, or is it a quiet defiance against languishing? Then we have to think, is it a search for bliss in a bleak day? You know, I get to look up crappy stuff that I probably shouldn't, my guilty pleasures, or connection in a lonely week. How many of us scroll endlessly and we know we shouldn't? Or purpose in a perpetual pandemic, really trying to find something or find our interests. All of us can be guilty of this at times.
Agreed, Sherry. You don't want to go to sleep because tomorrow it all starts back over again, doesn't it? It all starts over. So what can we do about it? A concept called flow may be an antidote. I can never say that word, I apologize. Antidote for learning. Flow is that elusive state of absorption in the meaningfully challenged of a monetary bond where your sense of time, place, and self just melts away. I want you to close your eyes and picture where you would be if flow was happening right now. Close your eyes. Are you on a beach? Are you on a hiking trail? Where are you at? And during the early days of the pandemic, the best predictor of well-being wasn't optimism or mindfulness, it was flow. People who become more immersed in their projects manage to avoid languishing and maintain their pre-pandemic happiness. We need to remember where we can establish our flow. Where is that place that we can go? If it's not in person, at least in our minds, to just kind of let everything go and start over again. So what can you do to establish flow? You need to give yourself some uninterrupted time, even if it's just 5 minutes. And I would encourage all of you as administrators to do it during the workday, where you give yourself 5 minutes and just set some boundaries. I never, before the pandemic, I have an adopted daughter, and she's Alaska Native, and she'd always go, meh. And I really didn't understand what that meant until the pandemic hit. And it all just came tumbling down. I knew exactly what that word meant now. And I'm sure all of you hear students, staff, maybe even yourself say it sometimes. We need to focus on small goals and small wins. We need to manage difficulty, a challenge that stretches your skills and heightens your resolve, and carve out daily time to focus on that challenge that matters to you. An interesting project, a worthwhile goal, or maybe just a meaningful conversation with somebody.
We still live in a world that normalizes physical health challenges, but stigmatizes mental health challenges. As we head into a new post-pandemic reality, it's really time to rethink our understanding of mental health and well-being, and really normalize what we're all going through right now. One way is by acknowledging that so many of us truly are languishing, and just being real and honest about that. We can start giving voice to quiet despair and lighting a path out of that void.
So I'm going to take you on a little trip now, and I'm going to apologize because I'm not going to be looking at you because I'm moving my screen over here that I'm sharing with you. How many of you are familiar with the Alaska Transforming Schools framework? How many of you have a copy for your entire staff? We'll talk about that in a few slides. So if you don't know where the website is, if you go to, I'm trying to make this a little bit bigger. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me grab it over. So in the middle of the department slide website, you'll find this page, and here is the Transforming Schools, which is a framework that was released in 2019 from the department and a whole bunch of partners, including the First Alaskans, the Mental Health Board. You can see them all listed here on the screen. Here's where you can get a PDF copy of it, but don't worry about the PDF. I can get you hard copies. We also developed a toolkit and released that last fall, and I'll show that to you in a minute. But before I go there, we have a professional development series that was launched that's all closed captioned and linked here on our website. We have our Transforming Schools Quick Guide. This is a 2-pager that'll tell you what to do and where everything is on this website, which was just posted this morning, so that's exciting. When we released our online toolkit, all of these bubbles that you see here are sections of the chapters in the framework and sections of the toolkit. And I'll just go to deconstructing trauma. All of them will tell you what the section is about. If there's any community adaptations, there's going to be steps for leadership with resources to go with each of those steps. There's going to be steps for staff. There may be some other resources. And another thing that was just posted last week is our Milestone Guides. And I'll pull one of these up real quick for you. And in the Milestone Guides, you can use to track, where did it show up? I know it's on my computer somewhere. Don't you hate it when that happens? There it is. I will pull that over. It'll tell you where you're at in each of those steps, whether you're preparing, starting, applying, or refining. And again, there's some resources that are tucked in here too. So there's going to be one of those for each of the chapters of the framework and sections of the toolkit. And then we also just added the knowing to doing videos. And so here you will have each section. Right now, we only have deconstructing and relationships loaded. There's short 7-minute videos that talk about different things. Some of you might have participated in this. And we also have a health section that talks about different health. Pat, you want to tell about the health section? You created that one.
Yeah, the health section just really, focuses on those things like sleep and eating, nutrition and physical activity that are so important, just as fundamental baselines. The other thing I wanted to say about the videos, that there are over 50 videos that will be uploaded in all the chapters soon, or about 50. Anyway, they're created by people across the state. This whole thing was built by Alaskans, hundreds of Alaskans, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But anyway, these resources are hopefully really helpful. But the cool thing about them is they're not locked behind a copyright. You don't have to pay for them, and you can pick and choose what you want. Sorry, Sharon.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead. And so, Erica, you said you don't have a copy of the framework for all of your staff. Have somebody send me an email, and this goes for all of you. If you don't have a copy of the framework for all of your staff, send me an email. Tell me how many you want, and I will send them out. I have about 2,000 in my office right now that need to get into the hands of Alaskans. We have sent out over 9,300 of these, and I'm going to keep buying them and sending them out as long as people want them. So please just send an email, and we will get copies out. If you even want some for parents or community members or school board members, just include that in the total that you want. What is the website on Deed to locate the videos? Pat, can you pop that in? Or are you on the next slide? Yeah, you're the next slide. I'll put the address in.
I am. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, so many people have worked on this across the state, and we're starting to get some feedback from actually some really interesting places. We just learned the other day, the Chicago School District, the largest one, or third largest one in the country, has got a new process out in their district that leans heavily on what we did in Alaska. We learned this because a national think tank contacted us and said, we talked to Chicago and they said, if you don't talk to anybody else, talk to Alaska. They've got it going on. And it's, again, because it was developed by a lot of people with a lot of insight. The other thing that came up, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, this international group developed out of the Marshall Plan after World War II, just put out a report looking at promising ways to deal with trauma and equity. They picked 5 in the world and Alaska's was one. So yeah, exactly. There's just some interesting feedback coming back, and we know you're all busy. And again, the whole idea is to make it as easy to use when you're ready to use it. So, and frankly, when you look at the milestones, you're going to find that a lot of those things you're probably already doing, and it's just a way to think about it and maybe add that 1 or 2 extra thing to get you over the hump. So, thanks, Sharon.
You bet. And there's something else I was going to add and now I forgot. It really sucks sometimes when you get old. Oh, we'll share this PowerPoint with Lisa and Dominic so you can have it to use it yourself or to share or just to get the links. Pat, I think this next one is yours.
Yeah, the other thing is that we've got about 20 scheduled online training sessions or professional development sessions. They're coming out regularly. There's a link here. It's on the DEED website. Things like staff wellness, the trauma engaged work, managing diabetes in the schools, motivational interviewing for teens. There are going to be more and more added throughout the year. So this website, you can go and check and register for the sessions. They're free for your staff. You know, send them there. They're also being recorded, so those recordings will be available throughout the year. And anyway, just a resource that should be pretty easy to grab, even if you can't make it in person.
And I'm really excited that Vanessa is with us, and this is a new position for the department. Typically, as all of you know, department staff, we are technical assistants. We don't provide direct services, but that has changed when it comes to what Vanessa is going to talk to you about next.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm really excited. I am supporting Sharon's work and Pat's work, but I am the new mental health education specialist. I'm a certified school social worker and licensed clinical social worker here in Alaska. And really my position has been funded by the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority until 2023, and truly to be part of this COVID response and recovery. And the aim really is to support mental health wellness, staff well-being, and to serve rural and remote districts who don't have access to a counselor or school social worker. And every year there's about 12 districts in Alaska that don't have any mental health school-based professional in their district. So I'm really excited to be here, and part of the services that I can provide is that training on trauma engaged framework and toolkit, virtual in-service trainings, strategies to just help with staff well-being and student well-being. There's a lot of anxiety, fear, stigma around COVID-19 and vaccination, so providing training around that too. And then delivering social emotional learning training, serving as a link between service providers. So anything that goes beyond the scope of a district school mental health professional and really needs to go to community, I can help support that. And then direct practice with students and staff at that level too. So
And
really excited.
she has her first session with a little kiddo at 4 o'clock today.
Yes.
I think this week she's doing some SEL lessons with Pelicans, they only have 2 classrooms, and she's getting hit up for both of those next week. So if you are a district that does not have a school counselor or social worker, let us know and we will get you hooked up with Vanessa to provide whatever it is you want her to help with. We're really excited about this position.
All right, next slide. We have on our DEED website, there's numerous high quality e-learning trauma courses too that can support us as staff, but also our students, such as learning about ACEs, family partnerships, overcoming anxiety and stress in our schools. And then there's loaded additional activities that are hands-on resources for teachers and staff as well too. So check those out.
And none of you have ever taken an e-learning course, right? Yes.
The other thing about the e-learning courses is you can feel free to use them in a group setting as well, just as material rather than just send staff to it. Do it as a PD session and do it together. I think
some of our first courses, we have discussion guides to go along with them also.
Yeah,
So
I think working in that group always enhances learning. So anyway, you know more about education than I do. So the other thing, family partnership. This is from AASB. It's in the Trauma Engaged toolkit around the family partnership work. This is just a really great source if you're really trying to reach out to families. I just wanted to bring that to light, and AASB I know has been the key partner with DEED on developing all these materials, and so their website is here, and they've got in many ways things that mirror what's in the framework, but also obviously school climate and connectedness surveys that I think are really helpful. If you can pull that off, I know you've got a lot of competing priorities. But anyway, and then there's professional development and also coaching around the trauma work that is available not only from AASB for a fee, but also from DEED, Vanessa and Sharon and others. So anyway, those are available.
And I just want to throw the care line slide in there. The care line is not just for people who are in suicidal crisis. They're a line for somebody to talk to. So make sure that your staff and your students are aware that that is a resource for them. And I want to thank all of you for spending time with us today. I have a couple more slides on here that have a link to Dan Segal has his version of the hand model, but there's a couple of slides, a couple of videos, one that's for elementary kids and one that's for secondary kids that explain the stress response. And so that'll be a resource that'll just be included at the end. But again, I want to thank you for taking your time. I want to challenge all of you to do something for yourself tonight, something that makes you smile and something that makes you happy, because we have to take care of ourselves before we can do anything for anybody else.
Thank you all so much for being with us. Vanessa, Patrick, Sharon, for helping us to get this organized. And we just appreciate the resources that you've shared with us and the insights that you've been able to provide. So again, this has been recorded and we'll be sharing this out with members. So to those of you that made the time to invest in yourself, we're really grateful for your participation, and watch for more of the We Care series. We'll be doing one each month. So look forward to that.
And if you don't want to show the video to your staff and you'd like this live and in person with the three of us, just reach out and we're more than happy to do that.
Great offer. Thank you all so much. And again, be well, everyone. Thanks again. Take good care.
Thank you.